should the Vols have a GM, a general manager? For those of you that aren't big NFL fans, typically general managers, at least the way it's supposed to be constructed, they're in charge of doing the shopping. And Bill Parcells was in charge of doing the cooking. So that's theoretically how it's supposed to work. I look at I'll take the Titans, for instance. I thought Mike Vrabel was a solid coach and will have more success before the end of his career. He didn't have the best GMs shopping for him. So that's just an example for those that might not understand the GM role. Now, that can vacillate. Some GMs have more power than others, but for the most part, that's how it's supposed to work, right?
Correct.
Okay. It rarely works that way. Probably out of 32 NFL teams, 16 do it right. But anyway, Dallas Cowboys. But Caleb, why do you think the Vols need a GM?
So I think this is a way to, and this struck me because Ron Rivera got hired out at Cal. And interestingly enough, Dave, in basketball.
In a GM role.
In a GM role. Yeah, in a GM role.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, you're going to find this funny. When you were off last week, we talked about this in basketball. UNC is eyeing Buzz Peterson to be its official GM. And now we can make fun of it, but like what we realize with coaching in college is there are some people that are really bad coaches, and it's usually for one or two reasons. It's one, because they don't know ball, they're bad X's and O's coaches. And the other one is they are terrible at evaluating talent. And look, we've said this about Jeremy Pruitt. Terrible coach, great talent evaluator. Like A+ talent evaluator. I would hire Jeremy Pruitt as a GM of my football program tomorrow. Buzz Peterson was that in basketball.
Whoa. No, you wouldn't. Because a GM, as I define it, is in charge of salary caps, NIL money. Now, you would hire him as a talent evaluator, like your lead scout. Is that?
Maybe the lead scout, yeah. And then I'd hire a GM that actually understands math, because he probably doesn't know math.
Math no good, Jeremy say.
So, but the reason it was intriguing and it struck me is because Buzz Peterson, we forget this, Dave. Say what you want about Buzz Peterson, the coach. He found Chris Lofton. No one else wanted Chris Lofton. And Buzz went out of his way to recruit. Now, I don't know. Some people think Chris Lofton fell into his lap. But he did target Chris Lofton. He targeted Juwan Smith heavily. He was all in on Tyler Smith like 3 years before Tyler Smith graduated. So Buzz Peterson did seem to scout talent relatively well when he was at Tennessee. He just couldn't recruit the top talent, and he couldn't coach for anything. I thought about this with Tennessee. I think Josh Heupel runs a great system. I still believe in it, particularly with the right quarterback. I think Josh Heupel has had serious issues scouting talent. I mean, serious ones. And we're talking about a guy who has yet to sign an offensive lineman out of high school that has started for him, and he's entering year 5.
Okay, I'll take you a step further. I'm not going to go GM because I think that's essentially what Danny White is. All right, and you're talking about a GM for a particular sport, so I'm not going to go that far, and I'm not going to go so far as to say that they need a GM over any particular sport, because for the most part, they're doing a good job of talent evaluation, right? Rick Barnes is, Kim Caldwell is, the baseball team obviously is. By the way, they get started this week. We're going to work to get John Wilkerson on.
Baseball is nothing but being a GM. That's all the sport is in college baseball. Recruiting and identifying the talent is like 97% of winning a title, pretty much.
Pretty good point. Okay, so here's something crazy. It's a catchy headline, and I mean it. When is Jeremy Pruitt's show cause up? Can you look that up for me?
Sure. I believe it might already be up, isn't it?
I think it is. By the way, can Dave pull off Lucky Jeans? Yes, he's hip. 62% no, too old.
Wait, it's up, and it's not up until 2029. So he's out until unless it's prorated from when he was out, when he first got fired, then it's up in 2027. But if it's up from like when he got the show calls, he's out till 2029. So 2027, 2029, around that time.
Okay. Should the Vols hire Jeremy Pruitt
as a lead talent evaluator?
Yes, not a GM, because he know like numbers. But I'm talking about just as your head of scouting. I mean, a lot of times your head of scouting, and I'm not calling out anybody at UT. I'm not even, they've got it so split up and fragmented. It's not like it used to be. Like there used to be one person in charge of scouting. Okay. So he would look at everybody and then he would divvy it up to different coaches to recruit. Nowadays, you've got one guy who has in-state guys. You've got one guy who has the Carolinas. You've got, I mean, it's completely different. I'm not saying it's better or worse. It's just different. So, but what if Jeremy Pruitt ultimately had to give a thumbs up or thumbs down that guy gets a scholarship or NIL money? And you don't even tell him how much it is. You keep track of the money, but would that be the dumbest idea in the world? And here's the other thing. The show cause penalty, correct me if I'm wrong, has to do with on-field coaching.
Yes.
So you could bring him in. Now, I do see one potential problem with that. Today's tough question, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers that say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones. Led by T. Scott Jones, they won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney, they play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. Okay, so bring back Jeremy Pruitt. Now, here would be the one possible problem with that is that he's a dirty cheater. And I think we could. Well, but now that's not cheating. I mean,
and also, if you didn't give him the executive authority, it wouldn't matter.
Well, and you could get around the show cause. So the people think a show cause means you can't be hired. Okay, so let's pretend Caleb has a 3-year show cause, and there's a governing body called the FCC. Okay, so basically the way it works is it's not that I can't hire Caleb; it's that I have to go to the FCC and show them why he should be hired and involved, and why he was not going to give out monies in Chick-fil-A bags like I had this morning. So, Caleb, I'm having trouble logically finding a way why this isn't a good idea, because how many wins does Josh Heupel have right now?
As a head coach of Tennessee or just all time?
Yeah, no, just right Tennessee.
10 plus 11 is 21, plus 9 is 30, plus 7. 37 wins.
Okay, how many would he have if not for Jeremy Pruitt's talent evaluation?
Oh, I don't think he's beaten Alabama in 2022. I don't think he's beating Kentucky in 2021. I don't think he's beating. So that's 2 right there, just right off the bat. And then I bet he loses another one or 2 somewhere. So I would say 33 without Jeremy Pruitt's talent evaluation.
Because you got to remember, at the end of the day, football is the ultimate game of Jimmys and Joes. And
yes,
just the ultimate. There's no other sport like it. You can talk about pitching strategy and baseball and all that, but when it comes down to it, it is all about your Jimmys and Joes. So you're right. Not only would he lose those 2 games, but I wouldn't be surprised if he lost another just because he didn't have a clear talent advantage.
And here's the point I want to drive home with this. See, I would have an entire GM office, basically. What I mean with that is I would have a lead scout, Jeremy Pruitt. I would have a numbers cruncher, which you talk about, a guy that says this is what you can afford, this is what you can't, like I guess the Jonah Hill guy from Moneyball, that guy that says what you can afford and what you can't afford. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then I would have a head GM who listens to them both and makes executive decisions. And here's the way my program would work. I would have the head GM listen to both. Then the head GM goes to the coaches and say, here's a list of guys you need to identify. Here's what you need to promise. You guys, because the coaches are going to have to do the recruiting still, right? They're going to have to actually go talk to the players.
Right.
So if I'm the head GM, I then go to the coaches and say, here's who you need to offer. Here's who you need to recruit. Here's who you need to go after. This way, look, let's talk about recruiting for a minute. Dave, what's the biggest drawback to recruiting for coaches? It's not actually and you know this, you covered it. It's not actually going and talking to the guys and having to stay in contact. It's having to identify them. That's so much work.
Yeah, and having to keep track of, even in a small region, 250 from their sophomore year on. And if you could eliminate some of those guys, that would help. I mean, you want to keep in track with some of them, just in case they hit that growth spurt like Michael Jordan did. But no, I mean, I think if you had somebody that said, he can't play, all right. People think it's funny the way I talk, all right. I mean, that's not Jeremy Pruitt.
If you could just hire someone that did that identified the player, and then all you have to do is the coaches go recruit to him, wouldn't that take a huge load off these head coaches at that point, and they could focus a lot more on ball?
Yeah, or even not necessarily identify, just eliminate. Say that guy's never going to be able to play.
Yes, that's a good point. You're right.
I had an NFL scout take a look at. We're going to talk about the 3-star guy, so I'm not going to mention his name. But I had an NFL scout tell me he can't play. He can't play at the college level, and I don't know why they gave him a scholarship.
It's what you call the somewhere, anywhere, nowhere guys, right? The lead scout could be the guy that tells you that's a nowhere guy. Because this was Derek Dooley's drawback in recruiting. For those who don't know why Derek Dooley never recruited Von Bell, he had the most long-term, like, drawn out, detailed evaluation process possible. And by the time like a player checked off every box, once he was trying to recruit him, like 5 other schools were already down the road recruiting him at that point.
That may be 100% accurate. I can't tell you. I can tell you this. He was just damn lazy. Like, he didn't want to drive to Chattanooga. He didn't go to not one high school football game during his time at Tennessee.
Well, I had heard that too, but I thought it was just in Tennessee where he didn't go to. I thought he focused his recruiting elsewhere, just outside of the state. To a large degree.
I was told he didn't go to one single high school football game. Anyway, that was just a huge collaboration of a mess. So I don't think there's any question about that. Now, so what's our poll stand at, by the way?
Oh, how hip is Dave? Okay, no. Should the Vols bring back
forward?
Okay, well, so should the Vols bring back Jeremy Pruitt? I don't think we made it clear on what we meant, because we're kind of implying to some people maybe we're talking about rehire him over Josh Heupel, which is not what we're saying. Can I rephrase the poll question?
You can rephrase the poll question. I want to tell everybody, but I want to change the poll question here in a second.
Oh, okay. What is it?
Okay, it's National Hemp Day. So I want to remind you that there is absolutely no place better than to get your hemp than the Hemp House. The Hemp House is fantastic, and you're absolutely going to love it. Go to hemphousechatwith2ts.com. Hemphousechatwith2ts.com. You'll be absolutely blown away. And don't forget to use that promo code that is 10% off. So let me ask you this. Let's make this the poll question. Pro hemp, pro alcohol, if you had to choose one.
Well, people would choose alcohol in that. I mean, if you say weed, it's one thing, but hemp's a little bit like different. I get what you're saying with hemp, but like it's not technically.
No, I really think that my kids, they think alcohol is absolutely stupid. So I'm not so sure that I won't win this out. So let's throw it out there and see what happens. Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2ts.com.
We have to
go to Hooked for 10% off. Yes.
We have to throw in what David Speak said. He's right. David Cutcliffe as a GM. Smart, talent evaluator. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Dave. This came out last week. Travis Kelce said when he was coming out of high school, like Tennessee was one of the only major schools recruiting him. David Cutcliffe apparently really wanted Travis Kelce. The reason Tennessee didn't land him was because they wanted him at tight end, and Travis Kelce at the time was still wanting to play quarterback. But
quarterback?
Yeah, Travis Kelce committed as a quarterback, and then he switched over to tight end. Funny enough.
Out.
But David Cutcliffe immediately wanted him at tight end. Like, Cutcliffe saw Travis Kelce as like a Hall of Fame tight end before anybody. He was a 2-star quarterback. Who identifies a 2-star quarterback and says, you're a future tight end for me? I mean, and David Cutcliffe immediately wanted that. That's a good one. And you tell me if I'm wrong, but David Cutcliffe is one of the best talent evaluators in football, isn't he?
Yeah, I will say this, and I love him as a man. He really is one of the few coaches that I got really close with. I don't know that his health is where it needs to be to take on a job like that. I mean, it's going to be stressful, right?
I don't think so, because he's not actually doing the recruiting or he's not doing the coaching on the field. He's just identifying the guys and then going to Josh Heupel and saying, here's who you need to go after.
Yeah, but there are some guys that are just so innately competitive.
They naturally work too hard at the job.
I think I think you tell him, hey, this is a 40-hour-a-week job, and he'd be at the facility like
80 hours.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's him, and his health's not great. So, I mean, I think 10 years ago would be great, but he still wanted to coach 10 years ago.